Okay, you should be all set.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yep, have a good night.
You too.
Thanks.
Okay. Do we want to go over meeting minutes of last meeting and approve those?
I'm ready if you are.
All right. Take it away, Joyce.
Okay. The Bridgewater Cultural Council, April 8th, 2025 meeting was called to order by President Theo Simeone at 7:04 p.m. In attendance were Matt Putnam, Haley Basowich, Theo Simeone, and Joyce Pitta. Nora Tarr joined the meeting shortly after it had started. Joyce Pitta, secretary, read the meetings from the March 25th, 2025 meeting. President Simeone moved that the minutes be approved and was seconded by Matt Putnam. President Simeone stated that denial letters had been sent out March 25th, 2025, and that the 2 weeks time frame for applicants to send requests for reconsideration would be tomorrow, Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. President Simeone asked Treasurer Haley Basowich to send out approval letters tomorrow, April 9th, 2025, to conclude 2024 business. Joyce Pitta asked Theo Simeone to send her by email the updated Excel spreadsheet with the final amounts that had been approved so they could be entered into the minutes. She also asked him to check to be sure all approvals were for at least $250, the minimum required. After checking his Excel sheet, only one was listed, but it was one that had been denied. It was decided to send the updated Excel spreadsheet to all members. At our next meeting, we will prepare for the 2025 session. A discussion will be held to reaffirm and set up our criteria for 2025 guidelines, which are due by August 31st, 2025. Joyce Pitta moved to close the meeting, seconded by Nora Tarr. Meeting was adjourned at 7:27 p.m. Respectfully submitted, Joyce Pitta, Secretary.
All right. I move to approve those minutes.
I don't know if I can second it.
I'll second it for you. Thank you.
All right. I don't know that we need to take a vote on that. It seems like we're in agreement that the minutes are good, so minutes approved. So I really would have liked to have had Matt and Haley join us tonight for discussion of our council priorities. But I don't think it hurts to at least have a small discussion about this, and then maybe we can wrap it up for the night.
Before we get to that, what was decided on that one person that was left off?
Let me look again. Because it's been long enough that I've completely forgotten, so that's not good of me to have that going. But
it was somebody by the name of Davis Bates III. He was celebrating the season, winter and Valentine's Day. And no letter of denial had been sent to him.
Looking through applicant. Okay. So this is weird. I am not seeing him in our oh,
He's in the submitted,
he's in the submitted. Yeah.
but he's not on the Excel spreadsheet.
Interesting. It doesn't look like Haley went through and approved those. I'm only seeing 2 pending approvals. Okay.
I think when we emailed each other, it was going to be decided at our next meeting whether just to approve him so that we didn't have to wait the 2 weeks.
Well, I think he was one of the ones that we had approved. And I don't understand why they're not in the approval. Let me go through and make sure that I'm looking at this right. Yeah, I'm not seeing why they wouldn't have been approved. So I might have to go through and send the approvals again because it doesn't seem like I think he's made the cut because everybody who was denied was in pending denial for the time that we had, and then they've all moved to full denied. So all the denials have gone through. If these just haven't been approved, I might just have to go through here and click approve.
Yes, but we have to decide on the amount because if we give him the full amount, it's gonna be over.
No, I think he was on the list, and I think that amount. Uh, I'll. Let me look at my spreadsheet. Okay.
Because when I added him at 250, the total awarded came to $23,870.
Just make sure as I'm looking at this. I'm looking at only approved. Yes, I'm looking at only approved. And hmm. It's 4-8. That's not the right one. Interesting. I gotta see what I sent you guys because I
Okay,
saved this and it's not showing up in my folder any longer. And now I'm wondering, I had to have saved it somewhere. That's 4-8. Let me look in my emails. Sent items. Can't accept. So this would have been it. But not awarded. Decision pending denied. Let's look at those two. Actually, let's just look at the pending denied because that's. Denied. Yeah, Bates wasn't denied, so why is he not showing up on the list? Hmm. Uh-huh. There it is. So, okay. We did approve that for 275, but that okay, I see how this happened because we never changed the decision to pending approved.
Okay,
Okay, so pending approved, and that was we put there. Okay. Okay, so this equals Okay, I'm going to say I'm gonna talk with Haley about this.
Mhm.
okay. The thing is, if you do a half amount, which is 275,
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna be over our allotted amount by $3.
So so then we'll have to shave $3 off, or maybe $5 and have a couple dollars left in our bank.
Yeah.
I'll talk with Haley about it to make sure that the numbers all add up.
Okay.
I guess we'll have to get her to reconvene. But yeah, it's interesting because I could swear I saw all these as approved, and now they're back in the submitted area instead of. I only see 2 pending approvals, which is weird. Okay, I'll go ahead and I'll make a note to speak with Haley about that. I don't know what happened with that, but um, we'll get that right. Okay.
Now, would we need to vote on it or just say right now we have a quorum that we approve 270?
Yeah, I think. Well, I think from the last time we did approve the values. It just doesn't seem like everything's gone through. So it's really just I think kind of fiddling with the website and making sure that things went through the way that they should have. But what I'll do is I'll put in 250 on the web or on my spreadsheet for Mr. Bates, and then I'll send this back out to you, and hopefully that'll be better now. Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. That's kind of a botch on my part for not following through on that, I'll say, but we'll get there. Learning curves.
Exactly.
Okay. With that, I just wanted to revisit those the criteria that we had for. Let me get back to where that screen was. our guidelines and priorities. So I'm just gonna kind of rattle off what our last guidelines were, and then full disclosure, I am a systems engineer, so I tend to deal with requirements on a daily basis as my regular job. And I am don't want to say stickler, but I do have some very particular ways about wording for things that would be requirements, and to me these count as that. So we had 5 requirements. One of them was artists, STEM individuals, or groups that reside in Bridgewater for projects to be held in Bridgewater. Number 2 was events to be held in Bridgewater. Number 3 was events in surrounding towns where Bridgewater residents would likely attend or participate with no additional cost or expense to attend.
Right.
Number 4 was other events held in local surrounding communities where the residents are likely to attend and which might have nominal fees, cost, or expenses required to attend. And 5 was other events that demonstrate they are of interest to Bridgewater residents. So I'm going to take these really quick and I'm going to paste them into the chat. So Joyce, this way you don't have to type anything. You can just copy and paste that. So requirements to me are shall statements. So if I were turning these into shall statements, I would say something like the events being held shall be held in Bridgewater. But that's kind of not specific enough for me. I would like to be able to expand that to include where we would talk about the surrounding events. So I would say, instead of saying, events held in Bridgewater, events shall be held no further than 7 miles outside of Bridgewater. I think that actually kind of puts us halfway into Brockton. And then if you're measuring from Bridgewater Commons, which is where I think I would nominally place that dot. If you think I'm being too finicky, please let me know. But this was
think
kind
that
of my
could be-
thought process.
I think that could be a problem because I live 3.5 miles out of Bridgewater Center.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get like I was talking about Bristol Plymouth School where Bridgewater
wow.
students attend, and
Sorry about that.
yeah. So I
That's
think
okay.
it should be a little bit further from Bridgewater Center.
Okay.
So I have an opinion. You knew I would. Sorry. So back in the day, originally, this was set up so that we had our requirements in the order in which they were put on the list. So number 1 was supposed to be the first item that we fulfilled. And
Okay.
then if we had money left over and things left over, we'd go to number 2 and kind of, so you look at all of them and then
Okay.
everybody has their favorites. And the thing is that we can't, for some people, being, 20 miles outside of town is not a problem because they drive or, there's access to get there. And to others, it's, no, I don't want to go that far either. So, and we can't plan or indicate what program maybe next year somebody might come up with that would have a location that might be out of our area, but would be so fantastic that people would want to go if they could attend.
Right.
So originally, that's why we put in the cost of it So for the first one, it's held in Bridgewater. We can exclude transportation as a big problem. And then as we added on others, that's where we started to consider, if someone had to drive there, if they had to pay for tickets, that kind of stuff. And
Okay.
because we're never going to predict, you can cut me off at any time because I'll go on for hours, as you know. But just it's hard to anticipate, what's going to be available and what kind of a program and how large it is.
Right.
So I think if we get too specific with distance, it's going to be more of a problem. And I know that we voted on some programs that were outside of Bridgewater because they were so delightful. You couldn't possibly say no to something like that. So,
Right.
so I don't know how you want to word it.
Okay, no, that's really, really good, helpful information. I'm like I said, I'm still kind of getting my bearings, and that was just my initial, like, I wasn't saying like that should be the rule. I was just kind of throwing out like, do we want to go to something like that?
Mhm.
But it makes sense what you're saying, and I definitely don't want to exclude things that, would be really beneficial for the people in Bridgewater to go to. And I'm sitting here playing with Google Maps, and it's really interesting how far a 20-mile radius is.
Yeah.
You're past Plymouth with that.
Right.
As the crow flies. I guess on the roads it's a little bit different, but
Mhm.
still you're not more than what, it's less than 15 miles to Kingston.
Yeah.
And yeah, 15.8 as the crow flies to Plymouth. So yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I just want to it's
Tighten
kind
it
of
up.
yeah, it make it a
I kind of agree with Nora that mileage limit could limit us drastically.
Okay,
I-
that's fine. Like I said, I was just kind of trying to think, just to make it easier. I still would like to move towards shall statements just so that it's a little bit easier
Sure.
for us to adjudicate. Like, okay, we're setting a specific limit on something so that people can't, it makes it just to make it our lives easier when we're going through here, instead of sort of hemming and hawing over, well, is that far enough or is that not far enough or something like that. If we give a criteria, it puts things into perspective.
Mhm.
Because we're talking about last time where we were saying, Foxborough would be, or was it Foxborough that was one of the events was in? I think it was Foxborough.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But if I do the same thing that I just did with Plymouth, that's less as the crow flies than Plymouth.
Right.
Although getting over that way is probably not much easier.
Mhm.
Well,
So
it depends on where you live in Bridgewater.
Right.
that's true. That's
Yeah.
true. And it depends on the time of day and the,
Right.
what people had to eat before they went out driving, because that seems to matter to 24 being blocked up or not. And
Right. How about if we put in something more that it has easily accessible and affordable transportation alternatives or something like that. So in other words, if someone wants to go into downtown Boston, you can hop on the train. And that's a whole different thing than thinking about getting in your car and driving in and having to pay for parking. So we might not want to exclude an event that even would be something fantastic in another town, but maybe put it lower on the list of priorities, because what you want to do is be able to go through the priorities we have set in the guidelines and say, well, we already spent all our money on the first 2 or 3.
Right.
And now we're looking at, you're on the 5th, and we don't have any money left. And that is our discretion to select as we determine how beneficial it would be. So, But if they were going to have something fantastic in Boston and we wanted to fund that, we'd have to make sure that people, we have to consider they have to get in there. And then if you're just going by mileage, like you said, Plymouth is right there. And I mean, they're all, and then what do you say if, well, I'm 1 mile out, so I don't count anymore. So we can't do that either.
Right, right. Okay. So we're going to rack and stack for so the priorities and guidelines will be rack and stacked for I'll think up the wording on that, but I know
Okay.
exactly what you're talking about. We wanna go through the list and say, okay, number one, this is what's definitely going to get approved. Number
Mhm.
two is the next in line. Number three is the next in line.
Yeah, and you can't help but everyone that's part of this council will see the value in something that's a little farther away.
Oh, for sure.
So, which is where the discussion and all that comes up, which is great.
Yeah.
But if we just went through real, sorry, you're not on the list, check them off just because of one thing. Whereas we can make a consideration about, gee, it's way far out there, and we don't actually get enough information back about how many people actually attended from our area.
Right.
We never get that information, so we have no feedback from people in Bridgewater to find that out. I know once we sent out postcards and nobody returned them. That goes way back at the time. And then I was at the 4th of July thing, the arts festival. I did go around and hand out cards to people and ask
Mhm.
them to check them off. If they had ever gone to a cultural council event, and I got more, what's that? So the amount of people that don't even know what we do is bigger, I think, than the amount of people that do.
Yeah.
And we need to publicize more, I guess.
Yeah.
Because that makes it easier when you go to make decisions too. If people give you the feedback, I went to this thing, it was so wonderful. And we don't, we're kind of shortchanged on that. We don't usually get that kind of information. I don't know how it could be had, but go ahead. You can stop me at any point.
No. You've got a lot of good points, and I'm sitting here thinking like, I know my wife is on, some Facebook groups and stuff like that, but Facebook is kind of, I don't want to say a dying medium, but
Yeah.
it's nowhere near the community space it used to be. It now occupies sort of a weird position, almost like Craigslist,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's really losing a lot of its power.
Yeah.
I have no intention of ever stepping foot into the Twitter or X they call it now,
Nope.
or TikTok space, and I don't
Yeah.
think that
It's not for what we do, it just doesn't fit for what we do. But
yeah.
and getting the word out is kind of hard, and it's always been a problem as far as I've
Right.
been. So
But I mean, what would be interesting, and I don't think that we have this would kind of be maybe a volunteer thing,
Mhm.
which I wonder if maybe we could ask
Mhm.
someone from Bridgewater University about this, but like I know that people code apps all the time. I wonder if we could start to sort of get like a Bridgewater app that just sort of, if we had the ability to push those notifications to people and say, "Hey, this is what's going on, this week." I know I receive emails from the library,
Right.
but you have to put your email in, and then you have to hope that people are paying attention to that.
Right.
Which 9 times out of 10 they're probably not, but
Mhm.
yeah, I just wonder if there's if there's any way to partner with the college to see if they have any means of media that could reach out to the town. It's difficult, right? Because like the very few go-to places we have like Juice Mill and Restoration,
Mhm.
we still would only be getting the sort of patronage from those areas there, and I know that's not the
Right.
entire town either. So,
Right.
I guess maybe some things for us to noodle on in the future.
Right.
But I would like to get things out there because we need to do something.
No, it really is, and that's one of the things with getting more volunteers for things and stuff. So, the way I got involved with it, with this council was, way back in the dinosaur age, but it was, they had a little article in the Enterprise, not even an article, like a 3-line thing in some list, things to do or something. And when they had a column and when they had a paper, and I cut it out and I said, oh, I didn't even know they had a cultural council. And I
Yeah,
was, and that's how I got involved in it. But if I wasn't someone who was doing something along that line, I probably wouldn't have even looked at it. So if I'm not a musician or an artist or interested in that, I just go to work every day, take care of my family, and I don't care about any of that stuff. Maybe I'm more into sports and we don't do sports. So in that case, those people aren't even seeing or even aware. To this day, my July 4th thing that I do at the quad, people still believe that the college puts it on or the town puts it on.
mhm,
And it's never been done that way, ever. It's all been
right,
volunteer driven for all these years. And yet people don't know that. And how can they not after all these years?
right.
So,
Well, and
um,
that's another thing to not to bemoan
yeah,
things like that, but like it used to be that places had their own newspaper
right,
and small town event kind of
right,
flyers and stuff like that, and that kind
right,
of has largely disappeared, mainly because people are living their lives online now, and
right,
it's more difficult to sort of cut through the noise when everyone's inundated with information all the time.
right.
And I don't think that we're not going to be the ones to unplug people from their phones and computers. We're just going
Nope,
to have to try to do the best we can with what we got.
right. So I think that's where we're going to have to meet them is, we're going to have to meet them along that line. Like you said, if there was some sort of somebody at the college who could, code up a quick, it doesn't have to be fancy,
No,
just
yeah,
a little, and let people opt in or opt out. And, it could be touted as a big thing and the college, and it would be, passed around a time. I hate to say it, but we probably should do some paper flyers or something so
hmm,
they can be left at the town hall or, where people go, restoration and, hair
yeah,
salons and
yeah,
whatever. But, put a little something there and people would say, because I'm just saying that's how, there was this little blurb and that's what got my attention. I cut it out. I didn't act on it for about a year, but then I said, this is kind of, oh, I didn't even know they had one. So, um,
yeah.
you know, but anyways, that's off
Okay.
topic. So, okay.
No, I mean that's it's on topic. We're talking about how we're going to because I don't think at this point we're not going to decide on new priorities, and we're still ahead of the game on that one, so I'm not
Right.
terribly worried about it. I
Okay.
just wanted to kind of get the group thinking about what we're going to do next and where we're going to go, and that's kind of it's really just helpful, right? We're just future planning right now, and
Yep.
I
Okay.
think any talk on this is really really helpful. um
And while you were talking, I came up with something for that, about venues that are easy.
mhm.
Mhm.
And I said, come up with shall be held at venues that are easy to access for Bridgewater residents. Does
I
that
like it.
sound like
Yeah.
what you?
That's
Yeah,
pretty straightforward and clear. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that does kind of hold water for me. I like
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
um
Cool.
Yeah,
Keep
go
it
ahead
up,
and
Joyce. Go ahead and do some more.
Oh, I let you two talk and while you were talking.
okay,
Well,
so I
should that be number one or further down the list?
I think I think we should have Haley and Matt
Mm.
to really start to rack and stack where we're going to put the priorities, but I do think that it's a good way of wording that one.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of now starting to think like, how do we get people to engage with us? Like, what do we have to do to sort of get people?
Isn't the Mass Cultural Council, don't they have information that they put out that gives you ideas of how to engage the public?
Kind of.
Mm.
Kind of not. I mean, so if we click on the guidelines and priorities, that's, that's our
No, no,
own.
no, I'm not talking about priorities. I
Oh,
mean
you
about
you mean
getting,
like the website itself?
no, getting, like you and Nora were talking about that app.
Yep.
Is there some, maybe setting up a table at that fall festival
Hmm.
where so many people attend that?
Yep.
Or the 4th of July parade, or
All of the
something
above.
where there's a lot of people in town.
Yeah.
Maybe have a list of the things we funded this year.
Hmm.
Yeah, but it's how do we get those? I'm trying to think of like how we get that out to the people, right? Like we can. The
Well,
problem
if you
we
have a table and you put candy on it, people are gonna come over.
but you're only getting the people who are going to stop at that table, right? It's not going to be. We want to engage with the residents of Bridgewater in a larger way. The people who come
What
to
about
those.
the TV station?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a good idea. I don't really have local TV myself, but I do we have a local TV station in the area? Like,
No, I mean,
what's the closest?
Bridgewater has their own TV station.
Yeah, BTV, but for if you don't have, I don't know what it is. I have Comcast, so I can't
Hmm.
see it unless I go to YouTube, I guess, or something like that.
Interesting. I did not know that Bridgewater had its own TV.
Oh yeah, Jeff Fowler's been running it forever.
So see, that's another thing. Like,
Well,
I
and how would you know? We don't have
right,
a uniform location other than the town website. We don't have that. We don't have a thing in the middle of town, with a sign that says, "Hey, this is what we do." And you know,
right.
it's always been a challenge. And I know that years ago they used to suggest the Mass Cultural Council suggested that you had to get like a survey every year, gather input from people in the town to tell you what they're looking to see. And way, 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 I know it had been done before I started it. They sent out something, and I don't think they got any responses whatsoever. Like nothing came back from people.
Right.
One year we did a couple of the people that were on the council. We went over to where people vote, in the school, and we
Mhm.
set up a table there, and giving out, like a little flyer, a little page, just said about what the cultural council was, and we didn't get a lot of interest there. I did it myself at the business, what do you call it? Autumn Fest or whatever it's called every year. So I went down there and I had half of my spot for my business, and the other half I just put up a sign and it said, I have money to give away. and handed people a little flyer that you fill out an application, and you got told them I forget what the amount was, but I had this many $1,000 to give away, and we had a lot of people take applications, take the information, and then I made sure, and not one of them ever followed through on it, filling out an application for a grant or doing anything. I'm sure that as soon as they left the table, it went in the trash. So
Right.
that wasn't good. And
Well, what I'm thinking is more showing them the places that have been funded. They might be something that they didn't know until I joined the council. I didn't know all these different activities were going on.
right.
So I think if we have a list of the people who are applying for grant money
hmm
and just show them that these are available to you.
Yep. Well, I know they used to print that in the paper in the enterprise. They used to print a list of the grants that we funded. So I'm not sure that they still would be interested in that kind of thing because it's only like 2 pages now. But when they
Right.
had a real paper, that was going out, and so they would do stuff if you gave them because it was informational, and there was no real deadline, so they could put it in when they had empty space, for example. I do the 4th of July thing at the quad, and if we want to put together a poster and bring some informational stuff, I'll provide you a table and seating and all that, and I've offered that every year I've been on the council because I've been doing that for 14 years now. So, because people aren't aware of what the cultural council is or does, and they always think it's a huge amount of work, and it's really not. And trying to get people to look at it, and only if it's an event they go to, does it grab their attention. But if it's not an event they go to, then maybe not so much. I don't know. But I know Tina was going to come down before she was promoted. She was going to come down, and it rained that day. So that was a pleasure. But, and they've got a sign for the Mass Cultural Council, or she has it somewhere. Somebody has it. That we had made up either last year or the year before. So there is a big sign that we should ask where that is now. And, we could put that up. I mean, if you guys aren't available to come down for the day, I can put it up and set it up on a nice area in the middle, maybe right next to the art show or something where people might take a look at it.
Yeah.
So I volunteer on that, but we have to find out where the stuff is that we had. So we do have a Mass Cultural sign, and then if we want to make up a poster, maybe that just shows, your cultural council at work kind of a deal. Maybe that would help to get some of the word out, but I don't know how many
Yeah.
people are gonna. I mean, you just have to put yourselves, I guess, in everyone else's shoes and think about it's 4th of July. You're walking around, you're looking at everything. Is that gonna make you stop and take a look?
Right.
So they should have a big sign in front of them on the 4th of July, in front of the band that's going to be playing downtown, because we're sponsoring them for that this year.
Right.
Right? What are they called? The horns there. Antiphonal Society, I think it
Right.
is.
Right. Yeah. We should. There should be clear demarcation that we're doing something. That way, people know we're doing something. I'm also wondering, like, and this would be exhausting, but
Mhm.
maybe we start, door knocking, which is never pleasant, but
Yeah.
and it's also it's too big for just 5 people, right? Like that's
Right.
I think the bigger thing is we kind of need more people to be engaged with the council, even if they're not going to be like voting members or something like that, but like
Yeah.
volunteers to help get the word out there that we're doing something.
Mhm. So I don't want to break your heart, but you are aware that the the people that put on the fireworks and the parade and all that stuff on the 4th, I
Mhm.
think they've got 5 or 6 people that do the whole thing. And I run the thing on the quad by myself. I have no volunteers. And
Yeah,
every
see,
year we beg and plead and we offer. I actually offered $100 for the day for volunteers to come and help. And I had only 2 people respond out of the whole town.
what about
So I tried to bribe. That didn't work. So
yeah, I I'm really wondering, what about like the high school? Have we ever tried to get I know it's hard to get high schoolers to
mhm,
be engaged with a whole lot,
mhm,
too, but like there's got to be something. This can't be a problem that isn't crackable. I don't believe
right.
that there is such a thing. I think
Well,
we
high
just need to
school,
figure out.
Mhm.
in the high school, they have to do so many hours of community service before they graduate.
So that might not be a bad idea then for us to
Mhm.
maybe set up a like a mass cultural council table at the high school at some point, and like if we could get an in with the principal or someone like that and say, hey, look, we're looking for kids to really get involved in helping us get events going here, and
Mhm.
and that way it becomes more of a thing that's like grassroots. The kids are talking about it to their parents, the parents then are like, oh, there's music and stuff like that, and
Mhm.
it's like we can that that doesn't seem like a bad idea. That
Right.
sounds really good, actually.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where like someone would have to have like it's difficult for anybody who works, and everybody
Mhm.
works, right? Like
Right.
that's what's the cost benefit analysis here. I can't really justify taking off a day to go sit in a school
Mhm.
and hope that I'm going to get students there.
Mhm.
But maybe that is what it takes. Maybe got to make that sacrifice. Who knows? Hmm.
Hmm.
Well,
I think you need to approach the principal first before you,
oh yeah. No. I'm not going to show up at a school and
Oh, I'll go with you. We'll just go in. We'll bring coffee. We'll chat. It'll be fine. Be like, hey, how are you?
yeah.
Um,
Ooh,
uh,
actually, that wouldn't if we could get Resto to
yeah.
kind of donate coffee to us to
Right.
that would be all right. Maybe we're onto something. Maybe it is worth taking a day off to get that idea going.
Yeah. Or
Um,
we go to maybe one of what do they call it? My kids are all grown up now. The school committee meeting. Maybe we could ask for a little time at that to kind of
yeah,
like say, because that would fit with everybody else's schedule as far as evenings, because they have those in the evening.
right,
And talk about, like, say, I just need 10 minutes, and maybe bring some things with us, with or a sign with a QR code on it or something, so that people can just scan the QR code on their phone and it'll take
right.
them to the Mass Cultural, whatever we have, and then kind of encourage, hey, we're here, we're not invisible, kind of a deal.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah, because it would be
something
nice
else.
to get that if we could get I feel like if we could just get enough momentum going, people would start to, do things, and then hopefully have, bigger, cooler events coming. My wife was actually looking into maybe making a request next year for I don't know if you guys have heard of the Moth Radio Hour.
No, I haven't. But what is
no.
It
that?
it's an NPR show that basically they do sort of an open mic, people
Mhm.
tell their stories kind of deal.
Mhm.
And NPR essentially syndicates it, right? Like, and
Mhm.
they take the more interesting, better stories from those events and
Mhm.
sort of put them on the radio. So it's one
Okay.
of those things where like anybody could get to be, the star as long as they've worked up a story that they want to tell.
Mhm.
Um, and usually it attracts a bunch of people who, really want to be storytellers and stuff like that. So that it's never like bad, but there's actually a lot of good. I definitely recommend if you haven't heard of it before. um Again, it's called Moth Radio Hour,
Okay.
MOTH.
Yeah.
um I'm not stealing your idea, love. Sorry, my wife is.
Yes, he is. I will say officially he is. But you can do
Nora,
that. Yeah, you know.
don't backstab me like that.
Oh, I will. No, any chance.
It's her idea. She's going to put it in. I'm
Yeah.
not going to be the one. Here's the thing. I
Yes.
said it. Now she has to do it. That's
Yes.
the.
Well, what about the Halloween thing? We've still got to do that, and that's got. If we're going to do that, that's got to be publicized, like
Yeah.
September at the latest. It'd have
Yeah.
to be arranged before that. So we should maybe that's where we should make a list of all the things we want. And I'm sure Joyce is doing that now. Thank goodness for you, Joyce, keeping us all in line here. But you could easily set up time with Jeff Fowler to literally go over. It's right, they're right on Spring Street, and he will set up a time for you to go in and sit down, and they'll, talk about the cultural council. You can put a thing on the little yeah, the flips, I call them. It's like a screen with like information, and he's always done that for the council meetings, and for all the stuff we do, other things we do. If you're involved in it in town, you give them the information, or you type it up yourself, and then they put it on, and so it's
And
always
where
in
did they
there.
put them on, Nora? I'm
It's
not following you.
Yeah, on BTV, in
Okay,
between when they're running programming, they're not like commercials. It's just like a thing that keeps
okay.
flipping, and it's town information, town meeting coming up and different events. And he always did the ones for the 4th of July committee and stuff, and other things, dances and stuff. Um, and I only because I have Comcast Xfinity. I don't get to see that unless I go to YouTube to see their promote whatever they're doing on BTV. So, because it's not accessible on our
See, and that's a
TV,
that's
which is
another
silly.
thing that I feel like the high school could easily jump on, because I remember when
Sure.
I was a kid in high
Yeah.
school, we had an AV club and an
Yeah.
AV, like an actual AV class,
Yep. Yep.
where they would do like I don't think it was daily, but it was definitely like a weekly program where like students would be on, closed TV,
Yep.
and there would be like you could watch goings on for whatever. I think you
Yep.
could get a lot of students, maybe not a lot, but you could get a couple students that would be interested in like eventually doing sort of a news career kind of like that. Like
Yep.
that's
Well, he's the one to talk to about that because he's been
okay.
doing that pretty much for years. And I
Okay.
remember he had a couple, and then John Luck, who lives here and I think still lives in Bridgewater. He does the when they run the parade. He's sitting there with Jeff doing the, I don't know, blow by blow kind of play by play thing of the parade.
Right.
And then they always send someone down to, the stuff going on at the quad, but it's, getting, I mean, getting a volunteer, because they're all volunteers. And so for them to have to say, oh, great, 4th of July, I'm going to have to schlep this camera around for the day, even they
Right.
get a little restricted. But if you go to him with I want some time to put this, whatever it is you want to put on, um, it would be something I think he'd really be able to do with us, because it doesn't involve a lot of other than production on their end. It doesn't involve them having to do all sorts of work to create the content. So you
Right.
could do that. You could tell them that you want to see about doing a once a month maybe thing about what's going on that the cultural council sponsored. And it would just be, give him a list of the dates, times, and what the event is. And maybe, they would have one of their people do a little voiceover thing about it and to get people's attention when it's on. And I know that a lot of people watch BTV locally. I miss it because it was one thing I always used to have on, on in the house just running. But now we can't get it. Not that I'm complaining, Comcast.
Well, you can get it. You just have to go to YouTube for it, which is
Yeah.
also again not a super. It's becoming less friendly for those kinds of things by the day, which is really disappointing. It's like
Right. Everybody just trying to make a buck. That's all.
yeah,
So,
well, and that's really it, right? Like
Yeah.
it's less about community service and
Right.
helping the little guy out and more about how can I make a dollar, how can I be an influencer, and like that's just really not the way to look at the world. But all right, so we're coming to the top of the hour here. I think this is a really great discussion. Happy that it's being recorded, that way people can come back and look at this too. Let's plan to maybe meet again in 2 weeks. See if we can get Haley and Matt and really start to drive these priorities. And then maybe we can also do a sort of rack and stack voting on where we want the priorities to be, and just have them cleaned up in tidy little statements. That way there's no ambiguity of like, or less ambiguity. I'm sure there'll always be a discussion that we have about it, but
Right.
and then in the meantime, Nora, could you send me the contact information for Jeff Fowler and John Luck, and I'll reach
Absolutely.
out to them.
Yep. Absolutely.
I don't know if I'm gonna have the time within the next 2 weeks to reach out to them and to, the Bridgewater school committee, but that's a really good idea. I like talking to the school committee. I like talking to the principal. I think getting younger Bridgewater kids involved is really going to be kind of it's going to be the breaking of the logjam, I think, because like once we start getting younger people invested in that, I think that starts to drive more people to maybe doing these things, because they're kind of a captive audience, right?
Right.
Like high schoolers don't they're not really going too far out of town. So like if we can start to make events appeal to, those younger people, maybe that also helps spill over into getting the adults in their life on board and hopefully start a chain reaction. We need to do something. So
Definitely. So I will send you over Jeff's everything I have for him, and you can touch base with him. And just so you know, I have to go over to the God, that's not even a high school. It's the middle school, I guess, to drop off stuff about an art show thing. To see if we can get some local kids to enter the art show I hold every year. So the way it works, just so you know, it's really terrible.
well,
The
no,
vendors,
it's not.
the
It's really
artists,
great because like the only terrible thing about this is I didn't know about it beforehand. I would come to these things, Nora, if I knew where they were. Someone's got to
don't
tell
worry.
me.
Yeah, don't worry. You won't be left out of this one.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's a ridiculous count of something like 80% of the vendors and crafters that I have don't live in Bridgewater or Rainham.
I mean, we got to start somewhere, right?
Absolutely.
Like it's not gonna happen overnight, but
yes, it is.
Okay.
Sorry, Joyce. And then Nora said, yes, it is. So yeah, but I will send you over his contact information right now.
All right, cool. Well, with that, I think we can probably close out for the night, if everybody agrees.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, I will send Josh an email asking to meet again in 2 weeks, and
Okay.
we'll go from there.
All right. Very good. Very good.
All right. Well, have a good night, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank
We have
you.
to,
You
are we
too.
all set to close out now?
I think so.
Okay. Well, thank you.
All right.
Well,
Talk to you
thank you,
later.
Joyce. Appreciate everything. Have a
Yes, thank you, Joyce.
I know. Have a good night.